Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our ALS Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Alex Yao, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for North America. I'll be facilitating the webinar today. Just a few helpful notes before we begin. If you're having technical issues with our webinar platform or any questions, you can type your message or question using the chat function at the bottom of the screen. You can also select the hand icon to notify me of your status so I can assist you. All questions regarding the webinar material will be answered at the end of the presentation. Today our presenter is Roxanne Olson. Roxanne has served in several capacities for ALS in Salt Lake City over the years. Currently, she serves as the lab's client services manager and as a project manager. As client services manager, she promotes ALS SLC's services and serves as the first point of contact to facilitate connections between clients and appropriate ALS Salt Lake City project managers. As project manager, Roxanne interacts with the many clients who focus on methamphetamine and other illicit drugs sampling efforts taken from a variety of settings. Today, Roxanne will be discussing methamphetamine and beyond. Thank you for taking the time to deliver this presentation. I'll now turn it over to you. Roxanne, are you there?
I'm sorry about that, Alex. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, everything's good.
Okay. Welcome to this webinar entitled Methamphetamine and Beyond. My plan today is to discuss with you the history of methamphetamine, briefly touch on different production methods for meth, and then conclude with a more in-depth discussion on the sampling process along with ALS Salt Lake's illicit drugs analytical services. We currently provide services to clients who require assistance with meth and other illicit drugs analyses to aid them in their efforts to protect human health and the environment. First, we'll discuss the history of methamphetamines. And this slide here shows kind of the timeline for several different key points during the time frame of methamphetamine development. As you can see, amphetamine and the formulation of methamphetamine has been around since the late 1800s and into the early 1900s. It was in the 1930s that the central nervous system effects came into focus for users of meth and its precursors. Nasal decongestants were developed and used during this time, and medical professionals were encouraging use for several ailments, such as depression, hyperactivity in children, and Parkinson's disease, just to name a few. As is well known, the 60s and 70s were two decades in which many drugs were available and used liberally. It was during this time period that an enhanced euphoric effect was discovered if methamphetamine was intravenously administered. This discovery dramatically increased awareness and prompted the passing of the Controlled Substance Act in order to restrict the legal production of injectable methamphetamine. I attached this slide to just show you some of the different production methods many use to make or cook, as it is called, methamphetamine. Note that for every pound of meth produced, over 7 pounds of waste is also produced, which adversely affects the environment. The table on this slide shows a number of contaminants that could be present in the resultant product or contribute to the waste produced during the cooking process. You may recall several years ago that over-the-counter cold remedies became less readily available. This restriction was introduced largely due to meth cooks using them as an ingredient in their meth recipes. Also note that anhydrous ammonia and starter fluid is used as an ingredient in other production methods. Because of the ease of availability of these ingredients, rural areas are somewhat commonplace for cookhouses. Out of sight, out of mind. Methamphetamine before and after. In the pictures on the left side, the lady at age 31 appears to be just like the normal neighbor next door. However, in less than 2 years, meth has done its turn, and by age 34, she seems like a lost soul. The young man on the right at age 19 could be a college athlete, but the start of his downfall at 24 shows negative effects of meth, and he too, by age 34, appears to have a very sallow complexion, shows most likely several missing teeth, and significant weight loss. These typical examples surely depict the ongoing decline of users of methamphetamine. Methamphetamine, unlike many other drugs, is so highly addictive that users can become addicted after just one try of the drug. Definitely not a drug to experiment with just one time. I'm sure it'll be okay just once. How did ALS get involved with the testing of methamphetamines? While under contract with the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health as their primary method development laboratory, Datachem Laboratories, now ALS Salt Lake City, developed method NMAM 9111. Since then, this method has become the industry recognized method for analyzing for meth on surface wipes. In those early years, ALS Salt Lake City also participated in a collaboration study along with National Jewish Medical and Research Center and NIOSH to identify clandestine drug labs, contamination levels, and the hazards those levels presented to both first responders as well as occupants. There are several illicit drug analyses method that ALS Salt Lake uses. And it should be noted that at the same time that we developed method 9111, we also during that same time frame developed 2 methods using GCMS technique with different extraction procedures. These methods, NMAM 9106 and 9109, remain as draft methods today and have been modified to accommodate many illicit drugs analyses in the Salt Lake City lab. This slide shows the various illicit drugs listed on ALS Salt Lake City methods lists. And I would just point out here that the primary drug of interest in this presentation is meth, but we will touch a bit on some of the other combination panels that we can perform the analyses on in the Salt Lake City lab later. Note the primary drug of interest, 9111, and then there are other secondary column chemicals, as well as chemicals for the in-house method that's at the bottom of the slide. ALS Salt Lake holds accreditation with AIHA for the analysis of methamphetamine by method NMAM 9111. ALS Salt Lake also holds a DEA license and supports the in-house developed methods to perform analyses for the many listed compounds listed on the previous slide. Who are our clients, you might ask? Well, we work with a number of different types of clients. Many certified decontamination specialists use our analysis services for both pre and post testing in structures that have been identified as being contaminated, especially if the levels of contamination are over state or local regulatory thresholds. Home inspectors, real estate agents, as well as homeowners or buyers use our services to help them make decisions with real estate transactions. It is becoming very common to provide analysis on samples for landlords and or property management companies who monitor rental properties, especially between renters. ALS Salt Lake also supports law enforcement authorities, first responders, as well as other civil servants organizations. Of late, we are also seeing a rise in calls for the need to sample and analyze samples taken from cars, RVs, etc. These calls are coming from used car sales shops, detailing shops, or from owners of recovered stolen vehicles. We accommodate these clients as well. We're going to take a little bit of time here to discuss methamphetamine sampling kits. The part of the kits that we supply for testing for sampling for methamphetamine contain either a prepared alcohol wipes, or IPA wipes as they're called, or prepared methanol ghost wipes. It also contains a 100 centimeter squared template, but the size may vary depending on state or local guidance requirements. The kit includes a pair of gloves and a shipping vial to ship the sample once it's been obtained to the laboratory, along with an analytical request form for documentation that will be returned with the samples. We'll discuss further other portions of this later in the presentation. It should be noted here that there are a number of meth instant test products that can be purchased either online or in local hardware home center stores, which may provide either a positive or negative result. ALS provides quantitative results per sample using this meth sampling kit as described on this slide as the collection media, so the end user can make decisions based on data in order to meet state standard action level thresholds. Now we're going to discuss the proper wipe technique. And using the methods described on the previous, the meth test kits described on the previous slide, we are recommending that these collections of samples should come from hard surfaces. There are several steps to collecting samples, and they are always wear gloves before sampling, put gloves on, as well as other PPE that will protect you from any residuals of methamphetamine. You would then determine the area to be tested. It should be a hard surface. Secure the square template to the area with tape along the outside edges. If more than one surface area is to be tested, use a pencil to mark each inside corner of the template as a guide. Then remove the template before wiping the area. You would then open the packaged wipe that comes with the test kit, and using firm pressure, thoroughly wipe within the template, side to side in an overlapping Z pattern as described in the first little pictorial up there on the slide. And then you would wipe in an overlapping N pattern, which is shown in the second little picture there on the slide. Rough surfaces should be blotted uniformly rather than wiped. If more than one surface area is to be tested, turn or refold the wipe to expose a clean section and repeat this step. Up to 4 separate surface areas may be collected, each one using one unused portion of the wipe. You would then, once collected, place the used sample wipe into the collection tube and label with the sample identifier, the date, and the location sampled. Return the samples along with a fully completed analytical request form, ARF, to ALS for analyses. There is a possibility of using the test kit. If you use it one time, it's called a single sample area. If you use it more times than once for different areas, we would call it a composite sample area. You can see the description of that, of each of those on the screen there for you, so I won't go any further into that. But for many, the advantage of doing composite sampling is just to see if meth is present in the building using one sample kit at one price. If not detected, with the composite sample, then a client can feel more comfortable with the site. But if present, then multiple single samples can be used to isolate hotspots, which may need to be remediated. The sample analytical request form, or what we commonly call the ARF, the example is on the right-hand side of your screen, and it is to be completed and returned with samples to the address on the left side of the screen. The ARF is important to both the client and to the lab because it is most often the only communication we have between the two parties. We use the information you provide on the ARF to log in your samples correctly. The more information you provide helps us communicate your intentions to the lab, along with provides you with the records you need to give a complete picture of each sampling event from start to finish. When we log in, review, and release your samples to the lab, a sample receipt report is automatically generated and sent to the email you provide on the ARF. This report will give you information on exactly how we logged your sample in, when the results are due, along with much project information, all which is based on a fully completed ARF. Once analysis is completed on your samples, sample results reports are generated. On the screen here, I have given you an example of a single sample with a non-detect result. And then I've also, on the right-hand side, included a report that has both a composite samples with a positive result and a non-detect. If you'll note on the left-hand side, the single sample with a non-detect, there are 3 columns on the report. The first column has the result of the single sample, which is ND, which means not detected. The above, where it says sampling parameter area, it says 100 centimeters squared. That means you use the template one time, and so there is a 100 centimeter squared sample there that did come up back with a non-detect on it. We'll go further into the rest of the report on the composite sample side so that you can fully understand that. On the right-hand side where the composite sample report is, the first sample there says result microgram per sample, which is the composite result for the entire sample that we analyzed. And I think if you look there, you'll see that the result is a 5.0 example. If you'll note in the sampling parameter area above, it says 300 centimeters squared. The result in the second column is achieved by dividing the number of areas that you sampled into the total result of the composite sample, which is in column 1 on the left. And that result is noted in the second column as a result microgram per sample per 100 centimeters squared. If you look at this example here, you'll see that 3 areas were sampled. So we divided 3 into the 5.0, and we come up with some minor rounding issue needed at 1.7 micrograms per 100 centimeters squared for this particular sample. The third column on any report that says RL micrograms per sample is just a notation of what our sampling level is. And if anything, if we cannot see anything above the 0.10, then we call it a non-detect, as is shown on the second sample of this composite report. You note on that a non-detect is included on the microgram per sample composite sample result. And although there were 4 areas sampled by the sampling parameter area above, there was no no detection of meth. So in that case, we divide the 4 areas into our reporting limit. And that is why you have in the second column a result of less than 0.025 micrograms per centimeter, 100 centimeters squared. ALS Salt Lake City has a confidentiality policy that we strictly adhere to. We report to no authority, but rather only to our client of record. Once results are disseminated to our client of record, our role ends. We are not a consulting company, and so our role after we report is finished. Our end client then reports to their client or utilizes the results themselves to make the appropriate decisions should decontamination be necessary. If formal programs are in place in particular states, authorities such as the regulatory body in your state may be involved at this point. State regulations with a focus primarily on methamphetamine. Like I said on the previous slide, there are several states that do have formal programs, but then there are some that do not. This table shows, for example, and I'll give you our state, that Utah has a regulatory limit or an action level limit of 1 microgram per 100 centimeters squared. Anything that comes back with a result in the second column on the report of 1.0 or above micrograms per 100 centimeters squared requires remediation. Please keep in mind that several states do not have a formal program or designated action level thresholds. While this table shows program standards information for some, as state regulators review or become more aware, these standards may change, and they do change somewhat frequently depending on what information state regulators deem necessary. The table here is the latest information that I located in my research for this presentation. Please note that state, local regulatory authorities should always be contacted and considered as the defining authorities for individual state regulations. The resource provided on this slide, link there, also discusses the cleanup process for methamphetamine and other constituents such as fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, and more. With that, I wanted to discuss a little bit about how we can help you. The contact information on this slide gives you links to and the address and the phone number for us. And this is how we can help you. This information on the slide can be utilized to make contact with the Salt Lake City lab and put you in touch, most likely with me, but with any of the other PMs that can help you. We can help with providing specific responses to one-on-one questions you may have, assist with setting you up in our system, provide project quotes, assist you with media orders that can be shipped directly to your door, and serve as a liaison between you and the lab throughout the entire process, from receipt of samples to reporting their results. This is the close of my presentation, so I am ready to take a few questions if there are any. I thank you for your attendance and your attention.
Thanks, Roxanne. We're going to open the floor up for any questions right now. I'm just going to give a few minutes for people to submit their questions. And if anybody, has any questions on how to submit something, you can write out your question using the Q&A function in your toolbar at the bottom of the webinar. Attendees can also see all submitted questions using this window. I also want to review some brief notes while I wait for people to submit any questions. This webinar has been recorded. all participants of this webinar will receive a follow-up email once the recording is available to view. We also post our webinars on our ALS Global website and our ALS YouTube channel in the webinar playlist. I encourage you to find a wide range of video resources and past Webinar Wednesday presentations available there. Also, please follow our company page on LinkedIn as we post announcements and registration links to future webinars and other valuable resources and updates. And I'll just wait to see if anybody has any other questions. Well, looks like you covered everything, Roxy. If there's no other questions, I guess we can just go ahead and close. I want to thank everybody for attending today. Again, you can contact Roxanne for any questions. Her contact details will be in the follow-up email that will go out after this webinar. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Oh, we do. Yep. Thank you. No, somebody just said thank you from Roy. But all right. Thank you, everybody. We'll send up that follow-up email sometime tomorrow. And again, you can contact Roxy if you have any other questions. Thank you.